So, hello. We are here on the 11th of February for a monthly meeting. Um, yeah, that's exciting. I saw there was like a good conversation going on. Very good, always to have. And yeah, let's jump into the agenda and then let's see. Maybe we have like some open free time in the end or so for us to discuss anything else that pops up. But I trust Eric has a lot of things he can fill up the rest of the time anyway. um, cool. Short upcoming time offs. Not sure if anybody has anything else updates. Maybe mine one or so. Oh, it's read only. Sorry, you have to read it now. So I'm not going to tell you. I'm even going to tell you because I think it's important. But like for the upcoming like weeks, I think till the 2nd of April, I'm usually off now on Fridays. Just to have more time with family or so. Because challenging times. We'll take Fridays off. That would be nice. There's like a whole movement going on right now regarding like doing the 4-day work week, right? And Google is like pushing for it and more kind of voices, and that's an interesting discussion going on there. But yeah, general short update. OKRs are live, so we put out our new OKRs. There's like still some work I need to do there. Feel free to click on the link or so. In general, I want to kind of give you a short update. So please, everybody, kind of read through it. And yeah, I did not pay like too much to attention like it in the last quarter, especially because we were in the process of being like a new team and kind of formulating everything, and the goals were mostly set to like how the teams were structured previously. So we didn't do too well on some of them, and this is like nobody up here in the team is to blame for this. So all good in this case, but we start to pay some more attention to it going forward. And some parts I want to highlight in this. I shouldn't have written milestone in this like OKR basically for this quarter. And the one thing is like our narrow MR rate. So I completely ditched the previous numbers we had because now we're kind of like really measuring the whole MR rate for the whole team, and then kind of calculating back end and front end together and come up with like numbers for the whole team. And we could aiming for roughly like 10 MRs per milestone or month, basically is what we're trying to go for. The last milestone we hit around the 8.5, and we kind of were ranging around between like 8 and 9 or so it's good. And I think aiming for 10 is definitely possible because we have some people here who like churn out like 30 MRs in a given month, which is like crazy, but it's also good for us as a team. But this MR rate should be something we can all like focus on, which is a good goal for us to have. Also, another cool highlight I'm super excited about. We'll really aim for getting like 2 new maintainers in our team. This is good because it makes our team a little bit more, even more powerful, like with more advancements. On the one side, we have Fran, who's now really pushing hard to kind of like get his maintainer issue ready, which is great. And also Himanshu will be working on his maintainer issue. So let's aim for them. And yeah, that's good news, I would say. And then the other thing I want to highlight is as well, we'll focus again on having like one MR contribution to our handbook page. This quarter, I definitely finally want to pick up. I know I talked a lot about it, what changes I want to make. Now I finally want to take it. I think it's getting a little better now with OKRs out of the way to really focus and have some time for this. But also everybody, please take time to maybe also find a nice contribution to the handbook, make it better. I think we're really in the process of building like a really, really exciting and good handbook page. So there's a lot of cool things we can do there. And yeah, we'll just keep track of this milestone or this quarter basically. And my general goal is for our monthly meeting that I'm going to give like a short update on where we stand in the OKRs. So nobody of you kind of really have to actively track it like too much, but I'll give everybody a heads up. Where do we stand number wise and this kind of stuff. So we're all kind of like treated as like, or have more visibility, this whole thing, which should be exciting. Any immediate question regarding like our general team OKRs?
What is a narrow MR rate?
So that's usually just like MRs. We kind of contribute to the GitLab main project and have like the group editor label on it, and are kind of like contributed by people from our team.
That's sort of getting back to our discussion yesterday during the backlog refinement, that we as ICs are expected to deliver a certain number of MRs per milestone. That's how we are measured.
So the narrow part is what I mean. Is there a wide MR?
We have too few MRs per person per milestone now.
There's like an outer MR rate as well, which is I think the one contributing to other parts beside the GitLab project. And as far as I understand, the narrow is one only to the main GitLab project. So anything else is like not counting in this metric. If you contribute a lot to like dab or any other projects inside GitLab, I'm not sure those are counting in this MR rate.
No.
Okay. Dab never did.
Yeah.
But also this is very very frustrating moment for those contributing to GitLab UI, because GitLab UI doesn't count towards that as well.
That is absolutely right, and that's absolutely shitty.
Why are we not counting those? Or like why is there a technical reason that we're not able to count those?
I guess you have to ask the people who kind of put up these these graphs. I think it's like just how they accumulate the data. I'm not sure they take all projects in the GitLab ecosystem into account, is what I understand. But it's a good note for me. I will kind of find a clear definition of what narrow MR rate in this case means.
Oh, when you mentioned outer MR rate, that includes all the projects, I guess, or
I think those are the MRs that are counted but are contributed outside of GitLab, and those are usually the ones that are not counted for this general narrow MR rate, which we take as a general comparison across the team. So maybe that's the reason why it's like split up.
I know it's technically possible, because all of last year when I worked almost exclusively on dub, that was counted for my reviewer and MR rate, because that was all I was working on.
And I would imagine, like, for the folks that are, really focused on Gitly, like they have this set up for them too. So it should be hopefully trivial to add one of our front end projects. But yeah, that's interesting.
It's just a matter of adding it to whatever size sentence graph that you're particularly looking at.
Sizence, that's right. That's what it's called.
Cool. Yeah, that's a to-do for me. I'll figure out a complete definition of everything or so. And maybe I kind of talked completely nonsense right now. I will clarify on this and give you an update in the editor team channel. Cool. The other thing I'm super excited about, we're kicking off like personal OKRs for everybody. So we have our PDPs ready, the personal development projects, which I'm super excited about. Is now like a more an official form. Like I know in the past we kind of tracked some kind of like KPIs and goals, like in our one-on-one document or another document on the side. I think now we kind of put it more in sync in how we kind of work at GitLab, maybe kind of like even combine it with parts of like our day-to-day job. And also we now have it easier to kind of cross-link between different projects. So there's now our project for every person there. Just be aware, all those personal development projects live in the GL editor group. This is where everybody of you is like a developer in. So this means everybody has like access to each other's projects as well. So don't put like super confidential stuff in there if you plan to. The thing is, why I kind of went this route or so is I still want to say, okay, maybe there's like room and somebody has like work they want to contribute, or there's maybe tasks where people want to really kind of join forces or work on something together, so we don't kind of create a unnecessary barrier. In this case, everything lives in the GL editor group, and there's also now a team project that I'm going to kind of use for like some really team tasks that are related, not necessarily like to code or so or anything, but things we want to do as a team. Like a editor team day, which we're going to do sometime this year. Just a small highlight. But yeah, this is this. We can talk about everybody's like PDPs in our one-on-ones. I started to kind of talk about them anyway already with some of you. But otherwise, if there's any questions, just let me know. And with this, I took already like 15 minutes of everybody's time, and I hand it over to Eric, who's sitting on hot coals, to fill us in on his strategy.
No, I thank you for taking enough time for me to catch up on a little bit of stuff and write some notes. I'm just coming online after taking a few days off, so I have a lot to wade through. I'll try and keep it quick, mostly because I don't know what else to talk about, and I want to give you all some time to ask questions if you have them. There's a read-only note in there. The TLDR is, sorry, I haven't made a ton of progress, but I'm working on trying to whip our category strategy, epics, and overall like organization of epics and issues into shape. I did a bit on static site editor and wiki, and started on, I believe, snippets last week, but it's a big effort. It's going to take a little while, and hopefully on the other side of that, it'll be a lot more clear what our real priorities are for each category, for the categories that are prioritized, and the next steps and immediate opportunities that we have in each one. So on that note, Roman, Michael, and I met right before I left, or a little bit before I left, and had just like a little brainstorming session. There's a link to this whimsical diagram. It's not complete. I wanted to go back and fill it out, but per my read-only note, I didn't get time to before I left. I'm going to use this as a way to map out larger initiatives and features for each of the categories, figure out which ones are dependent on each other and which ones we have to do in sequence. These aren't necessarily comprehensive, but in an ideal world, these would all make it in each little square. If you click through, I can share my screen too, just in case you don't have an account, or I don't know what that read-only view looks like, if there is one.
Works.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, so the idea is like, for editor light, which is not complete, but we would have little blocks like these are the things we want to build into editor light. Each one could be an epic, and have sub epics maybe. Same thing goes for Web IDE. We spent a little more time on Web IDE and snippets than anything else during our sync meeting, and so I intend to go through and fill this out. If you'd like to help out, or maybe pair up with me and think through a category, maybe like Dennis, you want to go through editor light with me, we could set up something like that next week. Maybe help me fill this out. If you want to just jump in there and put some stuff in, maybe like draw a box around your work so I know I'm not confused where things popped in, but that would be helpful. I would love it. And then, ideally, it's going to end up in a form like this where I can start sequencing things like, okay, in the Web IDE, roughly this year we'll do these efforts, and that will build into such and such, like a roadmap should be. So that is something I'm working on. And hopefully we can get excited about the output and the clarity that will provide soon. Next on the agenda, unless there's any questions about the fact that I don't have a completed roadmap to share. I saw some comments while I was off around settings, availability versus visibility that came up again. This needs to be documented better, and that's my fault. But just to summarize the question, we had some effort involved in turning off items from the left nav bar in the settings. So right now you can turn off things like wiki, issues, merge requests, and a bunch of other features. They're all defaulted to on, but if you don't use those features, you can deactivate them in the settings or at the project level. There's a whole bunch of issues all related to making that more consistent so that all the features that are generally possible to deactivate can be deactivated. In the course of this, we discussed something where we might provide visibility control, not just availability. So the idea that a feature is available, like we do for wiki, because it's the one, and snippets, they come to the top of mind, they're already implemented this way. You turn it off you try and visit a wiki and you get a 404. Like the feature is not in GitLab once you turn it off on a project level. That's what we mean by availability. Visibility, this concept came up a lot, and it's interesting, but not our priority right now. But the idea that you could change the visibility of your left-hand nav to make it cleaner or more relevant to you or your project, but still have access to those features. So imagine the wiki is turned off on the left nav, but you can still visit the wiki directly. That is something that is an interesting opportunity that we would need to validate, whether it's something we even want to do and what the return on that opportunity might be. It would be a coordinated effort. It's not what our category is focused on, like our group is focused on right now for the category. We should be thinking about availability, in that we want the application, GitLab, the application, to behave consistently for features that could be turned off for those that don't use them. So that said, I'll document all that so that there's no more debate, and I'll create an issue or an epic to investigate the idea of like a customized visibility. My take on this is that we would likely have the growth team or someone else do the research here. This is something that's probably bigger than even our group would tackle directly.
I've got one question related to that. So I know there's at least one, I think there's multiple places where those slider toggles only control visibility. So is there going to be like a preliminary effort to at least clean those up or like switch them to controlling availability? Because I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes up. The existing ones that only control visibility, and then people invariably say, well, should it control both or one or the other?
Yeah, the effort right now on our plate is consistency. So yeah, absolutely, we should be consistent. And if there's a reason that can't be turned off, like I know one in particular that we worked on is now only controlling visibility. We should go back and finish that up so it controls availability. If there's anything else that we didn't touch that is behaving like that, we should first validate that there wasn't a good reason. And if it's just a matter of implementing that, then it'll just get added to that epic. This is right now, though, I'll say not our highest priority. Now that work is getting queued up for more impactful work, we should keep this ball rolling, but that is a we'll just say a secondary priority for our group. Ideally one where we can do it a few more times and get a more carefully documented epic, and then turn it back over for other people, community contributors or other groups to pick up and follow our pattern to implement on their own. So just so I don't take up all the time, the top nav changes that we're working on. Michael has completed some solution validation on consolidating our drop-down menus for projects and groups into a super menu that is where everything will be found and much more easily accessible. We were getting some really good feedback from that solution validation. He's working on polishing up the UI for mobile, and I haven't caught up on the latest over the past few days. I saw a bunch of issues going back and forth. I'm hoping we can kick that off, at least start work on that in 13.10. I don't know what the size of the effort is, but I imagine, I gather that this was discussed in the issue refinement session, and there's still a fair number of unknowns. So yeah, I'm excited about that work, though. I think it'll be one of the more impactful changes that we've done to that category so far. And the last point I had is right before I left for my time off, we had a great meeting to sort of talk through our iteration plan and technical kickoff for the rich text editor. Pretty sure I recorded that and put it on YouTube, but Wiki is still a great target for this, and even more so because right before, like literally an hour before I logged off, I was finishing up work reviewing our product performance indicators. And so we're reviewing those with product leadership this week, I think today. And I was looking at our numbers, and the summary background here is when we look at our performance indicators, there's a handbook page. So this is all public. I don't need to mask any numbers. None of this is secret, but we have an algorithm that estimates our uplift for self-managed users. And the reason is because about half of our self-managed users, maybe a little more, don't report their usage through UsageBang. And so we kind of just take our best guess as to how many users of the group that don't report would be using our features. For Wiki, that chart was way off. And it said we had something like 5 or 6 million estimated users and like 400,000 actual users. Like there's no way, literally no way that was right. The data team fixed that, and it looks like our data is normalizing. But our uplift now shows that we probably have close to 800,000, maybe a little more, 820,000 monthly active users for the wiki, which is really nice to have a category that is so widely used and makes it even more impactful. The changes that we're planning with the rich text editor, I think we're going to reach a lot of people and make a lot of really positive change to the wiki, and hopefully see that grow as more people realize it and use it and decide they want to use it more. So I'm excited that it's an interesting data point just to reinforce using wiki as our starting point. It certainly won't go unnoticed. I will point out the numbers don't change our overall product company, our company strategy for investing in the wiki. It's still not like it's not getting reprioritized to the top of our list just because it has a lot of users. We're focused on the right things. We're contributing to the wiki with the rich text editor, but right now it's still prioritized like it is prioritized. It's probably it's getting actually maybe a disproportionate amount of work in that Friend's been doing all the great work on the back end to help clean up our group wiki effort, but it's more like a 15 to 20% of our time that we should be spending on wiki as a group. And then if that changes, of course, I'll let you know. Any questions? Or Roman, do you want to? I was trying to answer your comment preemptively.
I think you answered it. I'm surprised it's like over, like one number that I heard like some time ago was like it was 100K to 150K. I said like, okay, makes sense to me to not heavily invest in it. 800K seems like okay. That's actually kind of good usage or so.
In any case, it seems like converting into Vue is like a good thing to do, and let's get that out of the way, like we were discussing yesterday.
Yeah.
Modernize it.
Yeah, we have to do anywhere. So I think there's a bunch of investment we need to take or so, as Jed says or so. Still surprised by like some of the product decisions or so. That's not getting more attention now because this seems like a very high impact feature, probably more than like WebAD or static site editor or so, any of our goals to have. But
yeah, actually, so to elaborate a little bit on the relationship between the wiki and static site editor, I think a lot of the interest in creating the static site editor group was around the idea of what is like a next generation collaborative environment look like. This data point alongside our continued like detailing of the architecture for this rich text editor has me thinking a lot about how they play together and what the difference is and different use cases. So I don't have maybe like a really comprehensive and easy to summarize answer here, but it is something I'm thinking about very often these days. And it's like, where does wiki fit in once you have a rich text editor? Is there some way we can bridge the gap between the two, or are the use cases distinct enough that we can continue to develop them in parallel with a shared editing experience? So it's top of mind, but not necessarily just defined enough to put into a direction page.
So I remember once Sid explaining his thinking on why a static site editor approach, like why wikis didn't work for many people's use cases and why static site editor was where he wanted to go. And it made a lot of sense and it was pretty succinct.
Yeah,
I wonder if we could
there's
find
there's a handbook page, why wikis don't scale, and wiki handbooks don't scale. It's specifically for the idea of a handbook. I'll put this in the agenda. And they're right on. I think that there are valid use cases for both. Let me drop it in the agenda here. Wiki handbooks don't scale. I think we need to get more clear definition on the personas and use cases that each are solving. Wikis as documentation, or wikis as, collaborative note-taking, things like that, could potentially just be solving things better. There's less upkeep, but for at least the near future, unless we built this into wikis, like for something that would require a review flow, you would need something built on the repository that can go through MRs. Static sites can offer that, and obviously you get more control over the output, and you can do things that you can't do in the wiki today. Not to say that we couldn't build the wiki to support things like including partials and things like that. It's just it doesn't do it today, and I don't know if we would have to change the backend platform to support that kind of feature. But yeah,
it seems like the crux of Sid's point there is like a static site editor approach lets you be MR centric and with commits and discussions around them, and whereas wikis don't have that workflow ability.
Correct. Yeah, I mean that's a big one. Not to mention the types of sites that static site editor or a static site generator can put out. Marketing sites and things like that. Like more fully featured sites are possible with a static site. We've seen some interesting movement on people using a public Notion page as their website, which is kind of an interesting use case, but maybe a little niche for the market. I'm interested in that though, and I'm looking into who's doing that and how it's going. I know I've visited 2 or 3 randomly where I'm like, oh well, that's Notion. What's going on there? So there's something there. This is more like maybe a 2 to 3 year strategy though that we'll realize. And I'm not saying it's going to take me 2 to 3 years to define it, but something that we'll be implementing and iterating on over the next 2-3 years, not necessarily in the next 6 months.
Where do you think the most significant problem lies when you compare the user's goals and our wiki feature? Do you think it has more to do with the management of the wiki, creating, updating pages, or the reading of the wiki of the user that's actually that isn't looking to edit it, but is looking to just get information?
Yeah, I mean that's a good point too. Like our core, I don't know, our core job to be done, I guess, with the static site editor was driving people to make edits, right? Like we weren't interested in bringing more people to the page to consume the information, but our wiki data is people interacting with the wiki, because a wiki is meant to be there as a source of information. So I believe at least we're counting users, page views, as a monthly active user. And as we should. I think that that's the crux of the value that the wiki adds. So I think, I think that is a major distinction. I think you're very correctly pointing out that for a wiki to be useful and successful, a lot of it is around consumption of the information that somebody has put in there. The power, as Chad was mentioning, the power of a static site generator and a collaborative editing process built around that, like we were building for the static site editor, is that we're driving collaboration on that content, which is a much more narrow slice of the potential user base.
Right. So I was thinking, this is a crazy idea. Like when you hear wiki, like I'm thinking Wikipedia and all the other like self-managed, like out of the box wiki solutions. So it's interesting that we call our feature wiki, because when you compare it to those, it's lacking a good number of not only usability of me trying to find things, and because things are categorized and however, but also from the management perspective. I wonder if it would be an interesting catalyst to imagine a wiki, even though I can still edit it the way it is, but if we just deployed it to like a GitLab Pages site and it stood alone on its own, and we weren't polluted by the project sidebar and all the other GitLab stuff going on. This is a knowledge base that's out there. And so me as the user, now that I'm not polluted by the rest of everything, I'm how else do you say wiki?
I love it.
Anyways, if the wiki result could stand alone and be decoupled from the rest of GitLab, like a GitLab Pages would, then like, as a user, we'd have a lot more ability to view things like the user should be able to see version history and like comments made on stuff. And the user should be able to, do advanced searching on the wiki. And that would be really interesting if me, from the editor perspective, I'm just focused on making pages, but we've automated all the other wiki features for end users to have a positive. Roman, you keep laughing at me.
Roman keeps laughing. I love it.
How do you say wiki? Is it
Probably like super German, like I said wiki.
Wiki.
Or so.
Wiki.
But I don't love about it. Just like I was so happy about this coincidence of kind of saying, oh, that's an interesting way of pronouncing it. And then Chad says, oh, that is an interesting way of pronouncing it.
I didn't even realize I guess you're right.
No.
Wiki. That is different. Okay.
Wiki.
Like Wikipedia.
It's okay. We're still.
I trained myself to say you all. I think I can add this one too. So.
Absolutely. I love it, Paul. Please keep doing. Never change. I love it.
Yeah, you don't need to change for us.
Okay.
I hear what you're saying, Paul, and actually you're right on. One of the big audacious ideas that I've had is like and we've talked about this as a static site editor group, about the handbook as a product, in that like you could just quickly spin up a handbook, and it's powered by the static site editor, and it's got all these like defaults, and you just like you get a handbook, right? We could shift our focus and say our wiki is powered by the static site editor. It is not traditionally a wiki in that it is got a lot of features similar to that type of category, but it is powered by a static site generator, and the pages are stored in a Git repository. I think that could be super powerful, and it could enable our users and our customers and everybody who wants to have something similar to quickly spin up a project that matches ours in the app. Like it just exists, but also clone it and do whatever they want with it, right? They could change the look of it. They could add functionality to it as we build out the rich text editor to support custom content block types or something like that. They could extend it to support rich media embeds, or like we have some customers that would probably be very interested to like build a a widget that embeds and renders 3D objects, so that you could have game data, game assets or something like that documented in it, and interactive modules. So I'm right there with you. I hadn't formulated this. That's a great question and a great observation. I think we could work towards there. I'd be worried about alienating our existing users and converting the data over, but it probably is a surmountable problem.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Our previous static site editor vision was we could use this across a number of different static site generators. You could use this for Jekyll, you can use it for Hugo or whatever. I think the main benefit here, and the main benefit for wiki readers and editors, is I don't want to mess up, like we would abstract away the generator and I'm just focused on pages, and then the readers just focus on being able to find their stuff. And that sounds like a much more focused problem that we would be able to do something really interesting with.
Yeah, certainly.
But I think one powerful thing to it as well is that version history. It is part of the data too that gets generated, that static site generators, if we're in control of it, that we can even make presentable in the end product. So I can see the value of wiki, and I see where Sid's coming from, because I saw a video of him talking to Paul about wikis versus static site generator things, and I feel like this might actually hit all of the problems, because when I think of too, like how Wikipedia is edited, there's a version history, and there's, not everybody is allowed to touch every page, so there's kind of like a change request things that happen, and you can see those discussions. And so to me, it just seems like our wiki implementation is just missing a lot of those features, maybe because we're doing too much as opposed to constraining our constraining to what the users actually can and should do.
I wouldn't say that we do. Sorry, Fran, go ahead.
Yeah. Also, because we are using a framework underneath, so we didn't build this from scratch. So we are still limited by that library's feature.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's Gollum, right?
And one thing that I kind of like miss in this is like, and let's feel like, okay, that we said we want wiki like to do too much or so for its scope or so. I think we just kind of try to cover like too many different workflows with too many products. Like we have a wiki, which is like, okay, it allows you to kind of structure some kind of data, and it's basically static data you want to have somebody to consume. Then we have the product GitLab Pages that allows you to kind of deploy some markdown stuff or so, or like has a certain way of like building it. And then we have like static site editor, which allows you to successfully edit markdown files. And in my ideal world, like all these kind of things would be one product where just say, okay, like I use it for a wiki, I either use it like as a data generation, I use kind of the static site editor or rich text like to just change everything. And the default setting just gives me a way where I say, okay, there's like one click option of like deploying it, and whatever, how I want to use it is just like up to me, and it's living maybe inside my project. So I get all the benefits of the whole MR flow out of the box anyway. And so, and we have basically everything in place for making this happen. We just kind of really need to start putting the right products into the same space, think about it holistically, and find one solution.
That's what I was thinking. It's really this Venn diagram. There's like different users, and there's this overlap of CMS-like features and static site editor, Jamstack-like features, and wiki-like features. And there's different users that care about different things. So it's really a design problem. If you like try to make something that does all of those things, it's going to be hard to make everybody happy. So it's like, how do we focus on these user personas and make something that, are they the same product, or are they different products, or are they 2 or 3 products? I think it's really a design problem.
And I think it'd be interesting focusing on the read user, because our customers are interested in the read user. Like that's the end user of all of the knowledge and information. And be interesting because you could sell it to the admins too, of like, the readers are really able to find what they all the information they're needing, and they're able to view 3D models and all that stuff. But that, I think prioritizing that user sounds neat, which I think is also kind of the way the out of the box wikis have done.
Just say it like Cartman says kitty. It's like, wiki, wiki.
Realize I'm getting pretty close to saying Wookiees. You know, I was
We
reading
could call it
Wikipedia the other day.
Wikipedia. That is a thing, actually. Wikipedia
Oh,
is
you're
a great
probably
source of information for Star Wars trivia. Yeah.
Wiki.
This is fantastic. I think you're all right on. And I love the idea of, I don't know, just picking a path, right? Like picking a static site generator that we can use, abstracting it away entirely and not worrying too much about extending for everybody else yet. You know, obviously, like as the product evolves and this wiki on pages concept works out, we might still find that it's useful to host other types of sites, and other types of statically generated content can make its way into that vision that we had for the static site editor already. But as a way to bridge the gap between wikis and the static site editing experience and our new editor, I like that a lot. I would be super interested if you just let that simmer for a bit and think about that over the course of the next, I don't know, weeks or months, and we can keep talking about this. I think we would get a lot of support there. As far as like product company strategy, I think nobody would complain about us moving in that direction. We'd probably want to validate a few things from the UX and technical aspect about migrating data and what our MVC really needs to be, and how fully featured it would need to be to make that kind of impact. But I like the thought process.
There's things like the A and Jamstack APIs. Like a lot of times people want static sites so they can mash up external APIs or have a lot of control over that. You don't necessarily, put code in a wiki, or at least not traditionally.
True.
And like the CMS approach, a lot of people want a lot more control over styling. That's why the marketing went away from the Jamstack, where they care a lot about how it looks. You don't necessarily want to do that with a wiki, or you'll end up writing a CMS, and you don't want to write another CMS.
Yeah. The biggest urge I have to fight as a product manager for this group and the former static site editor group is to reinvent WordPress and rebuild WordPress. As soon as I find myself thinking in that direction, I have to recalibrate and say, okay, let's take a step back.
There's a lot of money there.
I just described WordPress again. Like let's figure out what we're really building. But yes, you're right. Absolutely. Very, very poignant observations from everybody. Thank you. It's a good way to energize my brain after PTO. Thank you for that input. That was it for me. If you want to maybe stop the recording, we can touch more on that last point, but that's it.
Sounds good. Thanks for the good discussion. And I'm going to stop the recording.
Wiki.
Record button.